Not bad. Hurt yourself. All right, let's go ahead and call the November 13th Apex Planning Board meeting to order. Please bow your head for the invocation. Father God, thank you for the opportunity to serve the town of Apex. Give us the wisdom to make the decisions that are best for this town. In your name we pray. Jesus, amen. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Diane, do we have any items of information?
I do not have any items today.
All righty. So let's talk about the public comment. The purpose of public comment is to allow the public to speak on items that do not appear in this agenda on the public hearings. Any member of the public wishing to speak, comment on public hearing items will be called at the appropriate time later in the agenda. Please sign in to my right, your left, so that you can speak. We'll ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and if there's a group of you, that person can take up to 9 if you're speaking for the group, and nothing to be repetitive. I believe we also have folks on YouTube, so those on YouTube, thanks for joining. Moving then to item number 1, and the consent is the minutes from the October 9th meeting. We'll have a chance to review them. Any comments or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second from Sarah, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pass unanimously. All right, so we're gonna move now to the public hearing section, and Shannon is gonna talk to us long-range plan, thoroughfare and collector streets.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yes, so the proposed amendment to the transportation plan today is for the thoroughfare and collector street plan map. It is, it's over, gosh. Sorry, this is a little different than normal. South of US 64, east of Richardson Road. It is pertaining to the future extension of Chanticleer Drive, which is an existing residential street. On our adopted plan, it would be extended from Rothwood Way to Core Banks Street as a major collector street. So that means no direct access by residential drivers. The proposed amendment is only to shift the planned alignment of that roadway. And that is for consistency with what's been shown in approved plans for Ennis Branch, the development outlined in yellow, as well as to minimize environmental impacts. So you can see where our current alignment goes. It would cross 2 branches of the stream. The shift would have the roadway cross below those where the stream branches, and more perpendicular than our current planned crossing. This is possible. These ponds have been drained, so we can allow the alignment to get closer to that area where there were ponds there before. The proposed amendment has been reviewed by staff in planning, transportation infrastructure and development, police, fire, parks and rec, as well as water resources. There were no concerns. Water resources staff did note appreciation in trying to minimize the stream impacts in this location. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Shannon? Shannon?
All right, thank you.
At this point, I'll open up the public comment for item number 1. Do we have anybody in the audience? All right, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board for discussion and a possible motion.
If there's no discussion, I would make a motion to approve the amendment.
I have a motion. Melissa, do I have a second?
A second.
And I have a second for Steve. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposing? All right, passes unanimously. Liz is going to talk to us about a public hearing and possible motion regarding rezoning case 23 CZ 16, the Friendship Station Section 3 PUD.
Yes.
Liz.
Good afternoon. This is rezoning case 23 CZ 16, and the intent of this rezoning is to approve condominium elevations for Section 3. This site is located west of 540 near Apex Friendship High School. The site is located west of Richardson Road, the newly built portion of Richardson Road, and is currently wooded and vacant. The Friendship Station PUD was approved by Town Council on July 18th, 2017, and there was a rezoning amendment in March of 2018 to amend transportation zoning conditions. The condo use has been approved in Section 3 since the original approval in 2017. However, the elevations that were approved by Town Council for multifamily are not consistent with the style the applicant wishes to build. The town requires elevations to be substantially similar to those approved as a part of the PUD. The property is currently zoned Plan Unit Development Conditional Zoning. The property will remain Plan Unit Conditional Zoning, and all conditions of the previously approved PUD will still apply. The 2045 land use map designates the property as mixed use, high density residential, office employment, commercial services, and a small portion is medium density residential. And the proposed rezoning is consistent with the land use map designation. These were the originally approved elevations for Section 3 that were apartment style buildings, and the applicant is wishing to build condominiums that look like townhomes from the exterior, but will be internally divided into separate units. This rezoning was exempt from meeting with the Apex Environmental Advisory Board, because the rezoning is limited to architectural standards. The applicant conducted 2 neighborhood meetings, the first on July 31st and the second on October 23rd. After the second neighborhood meeting, the applicant added zoning conditions to address one of the concerns. All construction vehicles shall access the site from Hume Olive and not the internal streets of Friendship Station. Once again, the intent of this rezoning is to approve the condo elevations for Section 3 since the use is already approved. Planning staff does recommend approval because it will provide flexibility for architectural design and a condition to address neighbor concerns that will prevent construction traffic was added. This afternoon, staff did receive an email from Alex and Debbie Michaels at 2857 Hunter Woods Drive, and that email was also forwarded to the board. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Liz?
So Liz, this is literally just elevation changes?
Just elevations, because they only showed the apartment style buildings, and these will look like townhomes, but they will be individual condos.
Would there be a change in the functionality between going from a multifamily type condo to a townhome style with parking, particularly garage units and driveway parking? Is there?
So we did talk about, it will follow the townhome section of parking for the calculation of the parking requirement.
Did the applicant show difference of elevations between high density and the medium density homes, or would they all look the same?
So say,
Oh, because you know there was a portion of that medium density.
yeah, so
within the parcel.
The only portion that is left for the PUD to develop is a non-residential, and will have to remain non-residential to develop. There's about 15 acres that are left within the PUD that is already committed to being non-residential.
Do they have to do condos because it was in the PUD, so they're just switching to a product that's more consistent with the surrounding townhome uses? Or is it like, maybe it's a market question that's irrelevant, but I'm just curious.
That's maybe a question for the applicant.
Applicant want to speak?
Yeah, can I come up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liz.
I didn't know if I was going to get my time here or not. Good evening, everybody. My name is Patrick Kiernan, Jones & Knosson Engineering, 221 North Salem Street, and I'm here representing the applicant, Charm City Developers. I don't need to kind of go over the whole spiel again. It's pretty minor. Obviously, it's just elevations that we're requesting to change. Mr. Akers, the design, I mean, it will be different, you know, not going more vertical like an apartment style site plan. It'll resemble a little bit more closely to a residential type project. But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I think it was more of the marketability. It was just a desire that the developer had. Condominiums were an allowable use back when the PUD originally went through in 2017. But as Liz mentioned, it was just a difference in style. So that's really the only reason for the amendment. But then, as she mentioned, we did 2 neighborhood meetings, and in the second one, the Michaels were on, and they voiced their concerns over construction access. So we added the zoning condition about, you know, keeping all construction traffic to Hume Yellow Road and not internal to the Friendship Station development.
Is there a change to the overall height of the elevation?
Nope. None of the design standards or anything like that. Nothing else changed. It was just the pictures themselves of the style.
Parking lot lighting stays the same as well.
Yeah, I mean, those site plan type elements, I mean, they're just going to follow the UDO. We're not requesting any changes to anything like that. So, you know, like Liz mentioned, we kind of got into the weeds of how, you know, does the parking follow? You know, because normally condominiums might seem more like apartments, you know, in their design. But because of the style, the planning department, you know, ruled that these would resemble more townhomes. So I think internal to the site, I mean, there will be some nuances, it being a condominium development, but for the most part, I think it'll feel residential, like a townhome development. So there will be surface parking to handle any guest parking. There will be 2-car garages to require the, you know, just the basic parking requirements. But I don't think there was anything else that I wanted to mention specifically. But
Would there be a change to impervious area?
no, the allowable impervious is still stays the same. Mm-hmm. If anything, at the end of the day, it'll probably lessen the total density that could go there. What is I mean, Friendship Station was so huge, there was a maximum density for the entire development, and we're not going to hit that as far as the residential units. So we could have gotten a lot closer had they been high rises or apartment style condos. So this will actually probably keep the number a little bit more modest of new users or new units.
Is there a benefit to going condos over townhomes?
Townhomes were not an allowable use in the section. So condominiums were an allowable use, townhomes were not. So that was, you know, kind of the starting point. But my client has been, he's really liked this style of condos. He has some experience with this type of product, these condo products, and has been looking for somewhere to implement it. So obviously we met with the town planning department, and they were fully in support of the idea. So it was just kind of going through the necessary process to make it allowable. It would be, instead of a HOA, homeowners association, it would be a condominium owner association. That's one of the other kind of nuancy type things. I don't know if there's really much difference in, you know, the actual setup behind that, but I know it will be a COA instead of an HOA.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there's any really significant change to land use here. And this actually just dropping a pen to see what the adjacent neighborhood looks like. The new elevations look very compatible with
Yeah.
what's already there.
Yeah, that was the intent.
Any other questions from Mr. Kiernan? Sir?
Thank you all.
So we'll open up the public comment section. If there's anybody who wanted to speak, you can come forward. Just be sure to sign in to my right, your left. All right, well, we'll close the public comment section, bring it back to the board for discussion and a possible motion.
I think this is pretty straightforward. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. I think it's more of a favorable elevations from those that are shown. Be in favor?
So you're making a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 23 CZ 16 Friendship Station Section 3 PUD amendment as presented by staff.
All right, I have a motion from Ryan. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Alyssa will second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposing? Passes unanimously. That moves us to item 3. Shelley is going to talk to us about a public hearing and possible motion regarding rezoning case 23 CZ 18 Horton Road.
Good evening.
Goody.
This project is in the far southwestern corner of the town's jurisdiction, just to the to the west of Jordan Point. It is located at 9551 and 9613 Horton Road. It's about 19.25-ish acres. As you can see, the site is kind of sparsely wooded. It was selectively logged within the last couple of years. There's also an existing farm pond here, and it's actually 2 parcels. This smaller parcel is an existing Town of Apex pump station that was constructed so that Jordan Point could get sewer back in the day. The larger parcel is currently in Wake County, and outside of the town's ETJ, it's zoned Wake County R80W, like a lot of the other properties surrounding it. The smaller parcel is zoned RR. The applicant is proposing to rezone both parcels to RRCZ. The current 2045 land use map designates this as rural density residential. Now, that does not currently permit an RR conditional zoning because that's limiting it to 1 unit per acre. And this rural density residential has a maximum density of 1 unit per 5 acres. Just as a reminder, the current zoning actually, the R80W means that it allows 1 unit for every 2 acres. So the town's land use map is currently slightly below what Wake County allows out there at the moment. If this rezoning is approved as presented, the land use map will automatically update to the rural transition residential. That's that 1 unit to 1 acre transition zone that was added, I don't know, 6 months, a year ago, probably closer to a year ago now. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on August 30th. That meeting report is attached to your staff report. Per the recent UDO changes, a second neighborhood meeting was conducted on October 24th. You also have the meeting report for that one. Wake County Public Schools sent the town a letter of impact, and it indicated that all schools within the current assignment area for this project are anticipated to have insufficient capacity for future students. Within the next 5 years or so, construction or expansion may address those concerns at the elementary and high school levels, however. The applicant has proposed six uses. Those are single family, accessory apartment, utility minor, greenway, park active, and park passive. In addition, they've proposed 8 architectural conditions. Those are very consistent with all the single family rezonings that you've seen recently. There's nothing unusual about those. In addition, the applicant has proposed 19 other conditions. I am not going to read every one of those out loud to you. I am going to hit on the more unusual or different or important conditions, however. The first is that the development shall provide no more than 1 dwelling unit per 1 acre, and that's just a zoning condition to make sure it stays with the land. The project will also be stage graded under the UDO. What that means is they can only grade what's necessary to put in the infrastructure and right-of-way, so that keeps some of the existing trees and topography the same, at least up front. After that, on page 3 of your staff report, we have the maximum built-upon area at 60%, and then the height and setbacks are listed as well. Items 4 through 10 are fairly standard EAB conditions that have been adopted, so I won't review each of those with you. Number 11 was added due to neighborhood concerns from the neighbor to the west here. This is simply that a variable width landscape buffer will be provided along the western boundary. A 20-foot undisturbed buffer will be provided from Horton Road to a point about 320 feet south of Horton Road, so roughly there-ish. A 40-foot undisturbed buffer will be provided from that point to about 450, where'd my mouse go? About 450 feet south of Horton Road, so there-ish. And from that point further south, a 75-foot undisturbed buffer will be provided. In addition, the applicant is providing a 200-foot minimum undisturbed buffer from the U.S. Army Corps land here to the southeastern corner here. So from this section up about 200 feet, so roughly where the pond edge is shown, will be undisturbed. While this development would typically not be required to provide RCA because it's less than 2 units per acre, the applicant has agreed to provide at least 25% of the gross site acreage as RCA as well. In addition, they provided that HOA covenants shall not prohibit clover lawns or warm season grasses, shall not require that fallen leaves or dormant plants be removed during the winter, and shall not restrict the construction of accessory dwelling units. The HOAs shall prohibit any mosquito fogging within the neighborhood. And the developer is proposed to improve Horton Road along their property frontage from here to here, as described within condition 19. If you have any questions about that condition, Russell's here and he's happy to answer those questions. The applicant attended the EAB meeting on September 21st. There's a list of the recommended conditions for you. Of the 15 that were recommended by the EAB, 11 were added. Of the 4 that were not added, 1 was mitigated. So one recommendation was to preserve the existing farm pond. Unfortunately, they're not able to do that, and they will be using that as part of their SCM. But in order to mitigate that, they have promised to plant that area with native vegetation instead. Because this has less than 30 single-family units, the UDO didn't require that it go to the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. Instead, a fee in lieu will be recommended to Town Council when the subdivision is submitted, and they'll approve it at that point. Planning staff recommends approval of the rezoning petition as proposed. We believe that it will provide a transition point between Jordan Point and the Gracewood PUD to the south, which are both low density, and the adjacent rural residential and residential agriculture, the very low density, to the west and north. In addition, it'll permit single-family development at a maximum of 1 acre per unit, while implementing stricter environmental conditions than the UDO requires. providing that 200-foot undisturbed buffer we discussed, and a higher buffer than the UDO requires adjacent to the large lot single-family home here, and improving this section of Horton Road. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and the applicant is also here.
Thank you, Shelley. Any questions for Shelley?
So I know it's mentioned in like the, I think one of the neighborhood meetings, but that corner is kind of gnarly. And I know staff had recommended potentially like smoothing that out. Is that going to be part of this, or?
That's actually part of that condition on number 19 at the bottom of page 3. It talks about realigning that to a minimum horizontal curve radius of 198 feet. Beyond that, I will let Russell and Patrick discuss that. They're better at road stuff than I am, everybody. So. Any other questions before I give the applicant a turn?
Shelley, do you know what the ratio of Jordan Point is?
What the density is?
Yeah.
It is right around 1 unit per, or 3 units per acre. I will double check that before town council though and have that ready at that point. I don't have the exact density in front of me at the moment.
Any other questions for Shelley?
We're gonna look that up for you right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just think it'll kind of confirm your, like, the transition, you know, the scale of the
It's a good
area.
point, and I wish I had thought to look it up ahead of time.
You looked it up too. Yeah.
What's the density of Jordan Point next door? Any other questions while we're waiting on Diane and Amanda?
The last case that was similar in a rural residential that was rezoned, I feel like is our neighbors up on the north, Lake Castleberry. Very similar. It was off of Lake Castleberry or Castleberry Road, which is a ribbon pavement, kind of terminates into the core land, very similar to this. Have the neighbors expressed any ill will over putting curb and gutter on that, and do they want to keep it rural, or is this a welcome change? I guess I didn't see it in the staff report.
I haven't received any feedback from the neighbors about the change in the type of road. The one piece of feedback we have heard is the request that additional sidewalk be added so that people's children can make it more safely into Jordan Point. But as far as the difference between curb and gutter or ditch section, I haven't had any feedback from them.
But the sidewalk was committed in item 19, I saw it.
Yes, sir.
Like Castleberry, there's a lot of environmental concern because of the Jordan Lake, the core land there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice any nutrient controls on the stormwater, just the enhanced detention requirements. Was there any discussion about that?
I don't believe there was any discussion at the EAB, and I'm not aware of any discussion with town staff at the moment. It's just, I'm not aware of anything at the moment.
And embarrassingly, I didn't follow Lake Castleberry subdivision when it went to council the second time. I believe there was an additional proffer made about the buffer against the core land. And I see we have 200 feet here. I want to say it was almost double that on Lake Castleberry. Is there staff support for going to 200?
There is in this particular situation. We've looked at the draft plan, and actually I'll let the applicant talk about that a little bit more. Basically, they've committed to 200 feet of undisturbed, but the closest boundary of a lot will be closer to 400, 450 away. It's just that because they have to put their SCM at the lowest point, they can't stay out of it completely.
So we have the answer on the density. Jordan Point, the PUD was 1.5 units per acre.
My apologies. That was a little higher.
And the Gracewood PUD to the south, just for reference, is up to 1.9.
So this one will be, 1.5, 1.9, and 1.
When you say 1 unit per acre, I want to be clear.
They're not 1 acre lot size.
They're not 1 acre lot sizes, because I can't imagine that would be financially prudent for the town to accept that much infrastructure.
Right, because they're providing that 25% RCA and buffers and right-of-way dedication, they can't actually make them 1 acre lot sizes. That wouldn't allow us to have any stormwater ponds or anything else as far as improvements go. So these will be smaller lots than that, but there will only be 19 of them.
Is there a minimum lot size?
There is not.
Cool.
And it's because we wanted some flexibility to work through the shape of this kind of wonky looking piece of property.
Would this prevent attached product, or is it only single family detached?
It is only single family detached. It does not prevent accessory apartments, however. So if somebody wants to, say, convert their garage into a small apartment for their child, aging family, etc., they're welcome to do that. If they wanted to build on in the back, assuming their lot can handle that, they can also do that.
And that wouldn't count against their overall.
It does not. The town's policy doesn't let that count against their overall density, specifically because we're trying to encourage that. If there are no other questions, then I'll let the applicant speak then.
Thank you, Shelley.
Hello again. This time I'm here representing Friendly Capital LLC for this rezoning. So thanks again, Shelley. As always, she's been very patient and accommodating here as we've worked through many proposed conditions. So yeah, again, she hit on most of my spiel here. I won't bore you with all the details again. But like she said, we are offering the majority of the recommended conditions from the Environmental Advisory Board, as well as a few environmentally friendly conditions that my client came up with on his own. The lack of mosquito fogging, that's something that he's done in all of his developments. We are proposing that all garages be wired with 220 volt outlets for EV charging. As she said, we're voluntarily offering the 25% RCA. And then I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but you did talk about the draining of the existing farm pond for the sake of being able to implement our stormwater control in that area. Our stormwater pond is not going to need to be the same footprint, the same large footprint as the existing pond. So rather than just replanting that with grass and letting it kind of be taken over by weeds and everything, we're actually proposing to install a pollinator garden. There's a certain type called Piedmont prairies or urban meadows that basically they encourage native pollinators. And in this type of urban meadow, we would, as the condition reads, native pollinator gardens, rain gardens, or Piedmont prairie shall be planted within the footprint of the existing pond once it is drained, not including any area used for stormwater control or area within residential lots. And then a farm-style split rail fence will be installed between those gardens and any adjoining residential lots. So we think it's just a little bit better use of just that kind of unused land. It's disturbed because of the draining of the pond. But one of the benefits of these type of pollinator gardens is they don't require regular maintenance, regular mowing. So they promote, pollinators, but they also don't necessitate the, regular mowing and everything. The other thing that Shelley went in pretty good detail about was really the main thing that I wanted to talk about was just the outcome of the 2 required neighborhood meetings plus the one additional one that we had with the Williamson family to the west. They were great to work with. My client was more than happy to kind of do whatever we could to keep them satisfied, at least to kind of hit on the majority of their concerns anyway. So that the UDO requires, with these land classes, would be a 10-foot wide buffer along that whole property line. So as Shelley mentioned, it'll start with a 20-foot up until roughly about here, which lines up roughly with the adjacent fire pit on the Williamson's property. And then for the next 130 feet or so, it'll be a 40-foot wide buffer. And that basically covers everything in the front view corridor from their house up to that point where it dips down to 20. And then the 75-foot begins right at about, you can't really see it too well on this map, but there's a little accessory structure, a little shed right about here. And that's about where that 75-foot buffer comes in. And that'll tie in directly with the 200-foot core buffer. But like Shelley mentioned, you know, the 200-foot, that was strictly because of the wording undisturbed, where we actually are planning to propose any actual development. It'll kind of wrap around that pond. It'll kind of, you know, hug this shape more or less. So even that 75-foot buffer adjacent to the adjacent home is actually going to feel much larger than that. It's just the actual written in the rezoning will be 75-foot minimum. But yeah, there should be plenty of distance between the property line and any actual homes, especially considering building setbacks, et cetera. No curb and gutter. So it is going to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Russell, but it will remain ribbon paved. So we're widening it, but not adding curb and gutter. So it'll be roadside ditch and then the 5-foot sidewalk along our frontage here. That's really all I needed to hit on. I'll continue answering any questions that you guys might have, but obviously we'd love to have your support as we move forward.
Can you confirm the access points to the parcel?
So right now, and it's not written into the zoning, but our current plan would have access coming along the northern stretch here. Provides for a better sight distance. We can get a little bit farther away from that curve, so the sight distance is not an issue. But right now, especially with the small number of units, we only plan for one point of access.
So exit and enter.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us more about the road improvements that are happening there?
So it will complete, our half will complete half of a 24-foot edge to edge. So basically 24 feet of pavement. So it'll depend a little bit on, once we get the survey, of how wide it currently is, but from wherever the existing center line is, we will make sure there's at least 12 feet, which is half of that 24, on our side of the center line. So that provides for, going off of the residential street standards is 22 feet of asphalt. So that allows for at least a foot of, edge, the 1 foot wide, white edge line, shoulder, 1 foot shoulder along the side. Sorry, I got there.
I think I missed the answer to Daniel's question about the curve. Is there anything with
Yeah, so based on the town's determination on how they want that road set up, which is sort of mimics a residential style, rural residential style street, the minimum curve radius for residential is 198 feet. So currently, just based on our kind of aerial measuring, it's coming out to, I think, roughly about, I think it was like 170 or 175 foot horizontal curve radius. So we will be wedging it. I think we're expecting upwards of like 5 feet of additional asphalt on the inside of that curve. And then the striping would kind of get realigned. So it'll soften the curve a little bit. But since it is still supposed to meet the 25 mile an hour speed design, that was really the extent that the town encouraged us to go as far as softening the curve.
Patrick,
Mm-hmm.
Probably more germane to creating safer neighborhoods here, other than the curve there. Are you bringing potable water through your frontage to the eastern, or I guess it'd be the western flank of that Horton Road frontage?
Yes, we would provide water all the way across the frontage.
So the people that live down Hortons Road would be that much closer to fire hydrants.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
And
great point. I didn't think about that.
The sewer pump station is sized as a regional pump station. Are you guys able to utilize that? I would hope it's right there. So there's no additional sewer distribution, gravity sewer. I mean, you're going to tie to it right there.
Yeah, we'll tie it. I mean, there are manholes along that access strip. So our plan is to just, wherever we have a couple of cul-de-sacs, we might cut out the back with sewer outfalls and tie directly in. Based on our understanding of that pump station currently, there's enough capacity to handle, these, upwards of 19 lots. So that's definitely the plan, is to just tie directly in.
Two other questions. I didn't hear you talk about water quality. You talked about quantity in the staff report. Well, it was a committed element, and then the buffer to the core land. It's been written differently in different cases, but Shelley did allude that the distance was still being met consistent with other cases we've seen. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, so she nailed it. I mean, where we actually are proposing the lots to end would be on the northeastern side of that, where the pond currently is. So when you measure that out, it is closer to like 450 feet before any actual lots start.
Would it be worth amending your committed element to kind of allude to that?
We could discuss and see if there's something that we could come up with. Yeah, I don't see any reason not to. Obviously, just kind of adding detail to the condition. So I'll talk with my client about that. He unfortunately came down with COVID over the weekend, so he wasn't able to come tonight. But we'll discuss that. The quality, stormwater quality. That was not one of the recommended conditions from EAB. We didn't discuss it, and honestly, it just never came up in the discussion. Obviously, we're proposing to meet the 25-year pre-burst post, but as far as quality, nothing further than that was offered.
You would presumably be doing wet ponds.
That's the thought right now.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
Cool. Thank you all.
Thank you. Russell, was there anything you wanted to add in regards to the roads? Okay, thank you. We'll open up the public comment section. Is anybody here in the public that wanted to speak and hasn't already signed in, please do.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Alicia Williamson, so I'm actually the homeowner of that property on the west. I actually own the lot as well to the west of that one. And I've been working very closely with them. I find them very accommodating. They've been in touch with me a lot. So I will give them a shout out for hearing some of my concerns and working with me on the buffers and such. But what I'd like to bring up is, and I can also offer a little more insight perhaps to what's really happening. For instance, the Army Corps land. People are skeet shooting and duck hunting there all the time. So there is a lot happening down there. The road itself, it's not ideal. My children ride and go down to Jordan Point to find friends, go trick-or-treating, whatever. And it's a little dicey on that for riding their bikes. So I am a big fan of having the sidewalks be put in around that corner. But what I'm asking you guys is, in the email that I had sent out originally when this happened, was for the town to continue the sidewalk to Jordan Point, because already there's a lot of cars. It's a dead end street. It's a one-way in, one-way out. So all the cars that are going to the end, they just opened up a nursery school. You can't really see it. It's towards the end. So there's a lot more traffic in the mornings than at nights. And it's getting to be, I walk that street every day, all day long. Not all day long, but you get the point. So if they could add a sidewalk, it would help alleviate some of those concerns that I have and other parents might have to get our children into Jordan. And what I've been told is that the reason Jordan didn't have a sidewalk put in was they paid an lumen, or whatever. Yeah, so I was kind of hoping that the town could jump in and complete that. That's why I'm mostly here.
Can you point with your mouse where exactly on the map?
So right now, my understanding is the sidewalk, and Patrick can tell me if I'm wrong, is going to follow to the end of the proposed development. What I'm asking for the town to finish putting the sidewalk in to this entrance to Jordan. If they need to cross, that's fine. Use Jordan points, buffers, whatever you want to do, just to get me to this spot. This is actually a slight hill right here. So if you own a 9 and 11-year-old boy, they just bomb this hill with a bicycle as fast as they can, and cars do not go 25 miles an hour as they go up this hill. So that sidewalk would help me feel better about that adventure.
So short of Horton Ridge Road, there's no other greenway or anything to get into Jordan Point, correct?
Well, this entrance here is how you get in Jordan from Horton Road.
Right.
There is one other entrance. If you follow out this road,
Right.
it goes to Old One. But I mean, there's a good chunk of people that go in that way. And actually, in all fairness, Jordan's got extended to go very far back, and you can get at it from the other angle. But there is, there's cars all the time going in and out of that entrance. I don't know if that's it, or if you guys are wondering about anything else. No?
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Any other public comment? All right, I will close the public comment, bring it back to the board for further discussion and a possible motion.
Shelley, is that Gracewood PUD, does that come all the way up to Horton Road? The property lines are there, but I can't tell if that, looks like there's one single family home there and that other curve to the south.
It'll come most of the way up. So this greenish portion, and then this portion comes up to, is where Gracewood comes. There's a couple of parcels in between, and unfortunately those are mostly the parcels that separate this property from Jordan Point's entrance as well. We have had some discussions with the applicant about potentially getting access to the fee in lieu that Jordan Point paid and being able to use that to extend some of it while they're doing their own sidewalk work. Problem is, Jordan Point didn't pay a whole lot in fee in lieu. At the time, we didn't have a set standard for how much had to be paid per square foot or per 100 feet or anything like that. We accepted engineers' estimates, and the engineer at the time, and I'm not trying to say anything negative, but they just lowballed us on it. They weren't, I don't think, trying to do anything malicious or anything like that. It's just prices were a lot lower at the time as well. But Jordan Point was a review when I started here 10 years ago, or had just been submitted when I started here 10 years ago. And as I'm sure you all know, when you're doing grocery shopping, things have changed as far as our prices from 10 years ago. So there is some money, and it's possible that that's something that we can work with the applicant to do, or that we might be able to dip into funds for. But we're not ready to guarantee anything right now. And without more direction from town council, we don't feel like we can commit to that sidewalk at the moment.
What's staff's position on new cases when we come in frontage improvements? Are fee and lieu still supported, or is that a thing of the past?
I'm gonna let Russell answer that question. I honestly don't know the answer to it at the moment, so.
We typically don't request fees and lieux for frontage improvements anymore. I think at one time, like back when this development was approved, it was very rural out there. There wasn't a lot to connect to. And the thinking at the time was that we didn't want to have short segments of sidewalk gap that weren't connected. And that thinking has changed because, for one thing, fees and lieux over time, they lose their effectiveness because of construction prices going up so much. You can't end up building infrastructure you originally intended. And also, we found a lot of value, even in completing short segments of sidewalk. It alleviates a lot of headaches later from the town having to manage a project to install sidewalk after the fact. So one thing that was pointed out with a couple properties that are in between here, I mean, if we were if the applicant was to pursue or the town was to pursue a sidewalk gap, we might be able to transition across the road, might be able to talk to NCDOT about a crosswalk to be able to do that, to avoid putting sidewalk on those two properties, those frontages to the south. One of the biggest problems we run into with off-site sidewalk is dealing with adjacent owners, off-site owners. A lot of times people actually technically own to the center line of the road. You don't always have fee simple right away. So you run into issues where those owners, it's not just a matter of money, it's they may just not want the project at all. So so that's one thing we could look into when we work with this applicant through the subdivision plan process. Any further questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further discussion or potential motion?
I have some thoughts. Probably if I were a NIMBYist, I would think this is a good plan. It's only 19 units. You got 200 feet of buffer, the adjoiner, for all the reason she got up and stated there. I think the applicant's doing a great job buffering that property. When I look at this though, I look at our most western property down on the US Highway 1 corridor up against the future VinFast corridor. And for 19 units, I think these big lots, 1 unit per acre, at today's interest rates, I think they're going to be unaffordable, especially because we have a lot of really great proffers here. Kudos to the applicant. I think these are going to be beautiful houses in keeping with what's out there, which I think are about $650,000 starting. With today's interest rates, I don't think I can't afford that. I just think that we're just perpetuating unaffordability in Apex by this type of development. Having said that, that's kind of what the folks out there are wanting. So I'm not going to vote against it, but I think we could do better as a town and encourage more density closer together for the needs of the greater community.
I agree, especially hearing that adjacent development is achieving a higher density as well.
I guess piggybacking on that, that's why I'm a pretty big advocate of stormwater nutrient controls. Jordan Lake is got some pretty robust stormwater nutrient criteria that the state they're in forbearance period right now. I'd love to see that come back into enforcement, and we can probably get to do some cool stuff with assurances that we're not making the lake worse than it already is. But that's a state regulation, not a town regulation. There's not much we can do about that other than ask applicants to graciously do above and beyond stormwater, which then again exacerbates our housing affordability problem. So it's quite the conundrum. Having said that, there is sewer already there. They will be extending water up Horton Road to the adjoining large lots that are presumably built to prior standards and are probably more subject to needing fire protection than current housing, which doesn't really necessitate that high level of fire protection. So I think it's a good thing for the adjoining county residents to be closer to fire hydrants. But in this case, I don't see any concerns from what they're presenting.
I think I agree with you, Ryan, with the number of units per acre. You know, if you raise that, and given your knowledge about Jordan Lake, and then we have that note from Wake County Public School System, there's insufficient space. You know, it's like, can't really win them all, right? I don't think I'm gonna vote against this because planning-wise, it makes sense to me. Yeah. Am I gonna make a motion?
Yeah, are you?
I'll make a motion to approve rezone case number 23CZ18 on Horton Road as presented by staff.
All right, I have a motion from Sarah. Do I have a second?
Second.
Take your pick. Stephen?
Go ahead, Steve.
A second.
All right, we got a second from Stephen. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposing? All right, 23 CZ 18 passes unanimously. And we will need one more motion to be able to call today a wrap. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion. Keith, do I have a second?
Second.
There a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.